All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining our October National Webinar, Tools and Tips for a Winning Listing Presentation with RPR, hosted by RPR instructor Stephanie White. Allison James Estates and Homes is a nationwide brokerage which offers 100% commission and 100% support. Why split your commission if you don't need to? You earned it all, so shouldn't you keep it all? Our goal at Allison James is to always give back to our agents by providing education, training sessions, live webinars, live events, and full broker support with the most up-to-date tools and technology available. We are always looking for new tools and ways to be able to provide them to our agents at a lower or discounted price, so you can keep your hard-earned money for the important things in life and the people you love. With plans starting at just $35 per month, we have plans that cater to agents of all levels of production. As Allison James continues to grow, we will be providing more of these free tools to help you grow your business. Allison James Estates and Homes is ranked among RealTrend's top 30 independent brokers in America. We currently have over 1,100 agents and are growing every day. Thank you to all of the outside agents who have joined us today. We feel that training should be free and we welcome you to join any of our upcoming webinars or live events. Today's webinar is sponsored by our preferred lender, Movement Mortgage. I would like to now introduce Shelley Hoyseth, Senior Loan Officer with our preferred lender, Movement Mortgage. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning, Sheena. Good morning, agents, and Stephanie with RPR. This morning, I know you guys are talking about how to put together good listing presentations. So I thought I would talk a little bit about protecting your seller during their, making sure they're fully prepared for their next move. Sometimes I know that agents they're so focused on getting the listing that they're not necessarily as concerned about, a pre-approval that they might have for their next purchase, or really making sure that they absolutely know that the person has the cash they need or the 1031 exchange put together or whatever they need to do to help the client get from this home to the next one. Because we fully underwrite our files at the pre-approval stage, I highly recommend that you introduce Movement Mortgage. If you're in California or Washington State, you can introduce your sellers to me and our process and really encourage them to go ahead and go through the process of getting fully underwritten. And they can do that as soon as possible when you first make that initial contact with them about their listing. It will help them to know that you're caring more about just getting that listing and you really care about them going forward. So when I talk with them, I will explain to them, the pre-approval process, take a full loan application, gather all of the documentation, submit the file to underwriting, so they have a loan commitment letter for their next purchase. Now, if they're paying cash or maybe they're, not buying another home, it's also good for them to understand this process so that when their buyers come with pre-qual letters or, they can know the right questions to ask, and you as the agent can know the right questions to ask too, to make sure that has their buyer been fully underwritten? Is their buyer truly pre-approved? A good example of that is a client that I have right now. The listing agent, they've been talking about selling their house for quite some time. He chose his agent. He already was, he figured he was pre-approved and ready to go because he has a friend that's a lender who took care of him. And, that was earlier in the year. Well, now his house is listed. They actually just got an offer, and I reviewed his tax returns and different things, and he's self-employed, and he's had declining income in 2016. So that's a potential red flag that's really taking some proper time to make sure his loan package is structured properly, to make sure it's super strong, so when he gets into underwriting, we're not going to have a problem with him being homeless. He has an offer on his house, and we're scrambling now to get him into underwriting so we can make sure he's good to go. But if we had taken care of this much sooner, even months sooner, then we wouldn't be as concerned about that. So that's just something I want you to be thinking about. Ask the questions. If you are on the seller side and you have pre-qual letters, ask the lender, what have you reviewed for this pre-qual? Is this I pulled credit and I've had a conversation kind of a pre-qual? Have you fully reviewed all the documentation? Do you have the DU approval? And if not, why not? You know, are there any steps? Do you have verification of employment? Don't be afraid to ask those questions of your client's lender. And if you're not getting the right answer, feel free, of course, to refer them to a loan officer at Movement Mortgage that will make sure we get everything done up front. So that's my 2 bits on how to help your sellers, and I think it'll also make you look professional and as an advisor for them as well, and probably help you get that listing. So anyway, that's it for me this morning, and I will pass it back to Sheena.
Thank you, Shelley. Now, if you guys would like more information about Allison James Estates and Homes, please contact Alicia Aratari in our National Growth and Development Department at 941-677-2544 or by email at joinus@ajicorporate.com. Again, that's 941-677-2544 or by email at joinus@ajicorporate.com. With that being said, I would now like to introduce Stephanie White. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Sheena. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me today. Right, looks like open this up. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us, Allison James Realtors. It looks like I've got you from all over the country, and that's exciting. So different time zones, different times of the day. This is going to be a focused presentation about getting prepared for a listing so that you can position yourself as the market expert and win that listing from your appointment. We're going to key into just the specific factors within the RPR platform that will help you with that business. I'm going to go through just a couple of slides that are sort of introductory background information, and then we'll jump on the live website. As I go through the presentation, you have a chat box on the toolbar of the webinar product. If you will chat any questions, type any questions in the chat box that you have, I'll periodically keep an eye on that and make sure that I answer all your questions before we wrap it up. RPR is a wholly owned subsidiary of NAR. So you already pay for it with the dues dollars that you pay to NAR. So I always like to say get your money's worth. It has over 170 million parcels across the country right now that are viewable because it does blend public records information with MLS data. Most of your MLSs are still going to allow access to the active listing inventory to any realtor across the country, whether you're a participant or not. When you get into the sold data, they're probably going to require that you be a member or a participant of their organization, but you can still view the public records as well. So even when you're traveling or maybe going to send a referral somewhere, you have the ability through RPR to get a flavor of what's going on in a different area than where you actually work and live. It is exclusively for realtor use only, so there's no public portal, no access from a public-facing website. And as I said, there's really no additional charge. You're already paying for it within the dues dollars that you currently pay to NAR. So we're going to focus on the tools that you can use within the platform to prepare, understand the position of your seller, be knowledgeable when you go into that appointment about what they're going to need so that you'll know how to position the conversation. We'll look at how to understand the market conditions and do some in-depth research about the specific property. I'm going to go through a brief slide that will cover what an AVM and an RVM is, and then as we get into the platform, I'll show you how to do some refinements and where you can go to get more information about having that conversation with your potential sellers. And then lastly, we'll go over one of our simple CMA products. There are 2 available. We'll demonstrate the simple one for you today. AVMs and RVMs are common acronyms within our business, and the AVM stands for Automated Valuation Model. Our probably most common user of the AVM that you would know about right now is, I kind of refer to them as our frenemy, Zillow. Many agents love them, many agents hate them. Whatever your opinion is here, that's neither here nor there. What we're focusing on is the fact that they calculate the values for their Zestimates or their properties on their website by using an AVM. And as most of you are probably aware, it's often an inaccurate assessment of value. And that's largely due to the fact that they're not accessing MLS data in most cases. And the AVM only pulls what is in public records. It's like looking in a rearview mirror. And in many of your public records in different states, there can be a lag time of anywhere from 30, 60, and in some cases even 90+ days. So obviously, when you're not getting the most fresh data, you're not going to have the most accurate pricing, and that's the downside of using an AVM model. The RVM stands for Realtor Valuation Model, and it is trademarked by RPR. And what it does is it combines MLS data with public records, and then it allows you on top of that to do a refinement of the value so that you can add your market knowledge, condition of the home, condition of your market. And we're going to touch on that as we jump into the live website as well. Let me get out of this section and open up your website, and you can see we've got this branded with your Allison James logo right here at the top left-hand corner. I went ahead and saved a property for us to use, and you can see this is off-market. I can tell it's off-market not only because it says that, but it's also color-coded in gray. And as you get familiar with the RPR platform, you'll get familiar with the color coding and what each color stands for. So I went ahead and selected an off-market property because hopefully you're not going to go to a listing presentation on a listed property unless it's expired. That's another story. But with this, when I click on that address, it brings me to the detailed summary page, which is a lot of data. We're going to go through this and show you a couple of key places you want to focus as you're preparing for your listing appointment. The first is to look at the RVM, and you'll see where my cursor is in the center of the page. There's an estimated range of about 900 to a million, 900,000 to a million. And just below where that cursor arrow is, you'll see the confidence star ranking. And this has 5 stars, meaning the system feels pretty good about this estimated value range for the RVM. And you can see at the top right, or excuse me, left corner, the RVM is coming in at 998, 290. So right in the range that we're looking at below. I can open up details from here, and it'll show me the properties used to calculate that RVM. I can also hover over the information icon, and it'll give me an explanation of what the star ranking is. And then below, I can see the changes in the last month and the last 12 months. Now, this is a link to about a 1-minute video, which we're not going to play during the presentation, but if you're going back and playing on the platform, it'll be helpful to kind of remind you of some of the things that I've just covered regarding what the RVM is and how to have the conversation with your seller. As I scroll down, this is pulled obviously from public records, so I don't have a photo uploaded. Now, RPR does have a mobile app, so you could go open the app, take a nice cover photo of the house before your appointment, and upload it into RPR all from the app, and it does synchronize in real time, so that would be on your desktop version as well. But I can also upload photos if you just happen to take that. You simply click Upload Photos, and then you browse through your files. And I'm going to upload the reminder of Code of Ethics because that's hopefully on everyone's mind. Right now, you do have your Code of Ethics deadline coming at the end of the year. So you can see how this uploads within the page for this specific property. And then when I hit Edit, it will allow me to use this on the cover for the report that I'll pull. So you have some different options available with how to bring the data into the platform. You also have a button here that will allow you to calculate sellers' proceeds. And I went ahead and put a few figures in here just to get started, and you can see I've got a low-end price and a high-end price. Obviously not on this property, it was more of $1 million. But then you also have the ability to change the variables. Maybe on the low end, my seller is not going to make any concessions, understandably. But if you got something closer to the asking price, then the seller might be willing to pay a little bit of closing costs on behalf of the buyer. So you can calculate this, and it does, as you see when I typed it in, it does the automatic calculations for you, so you don't have to use your calculator or fingers and toes to do the math. Once you've got it the way you want it, you simply save and close. And I can incorporate this into my seller's report, which we're going to look at a sample of a seller's report I pulled prior to the class. As I scroll further down, I have several sections within the detail summary. These will each tell me where the data is pulled from. For example, it's telling me that the homeowner's information is being pulled from the public records. I also have facts about the home, which I can override and update, and I can always add some notes within the platform, and that will either attach to the home in the report, or if I've made a note that maybe I don't want to share with the seller through a written report, then I can hide that from the report, and it'll be for your information only. As I go a little bit further down, you can see I have flood zone information, even a walkability score. That's a more and more popular thing with your millennial in people who want to work and play in the same place that they live. Have links to the school districts, but then my legal description. Most of you, or many of you, are probably having to go to public records right now to pull your legal description for the property, and I also have the ability to download the plat map here as well. So I can look at the legal description, but I can open and even print the actual plat map for the property if that's something that I need to be able to work with a more visual buyer, or maybe there's just simply some details regarding the size or the width and length of the boundary of the property. So that's all available, and these pull from your public records, allowing you just to have more information about the home. And if you bring this in your report as you meet with your seller, again, you're positioning yourself as the market expert because you have been able to gather all of this data even prior to the listing appointment. Below I have my mortgage records, and obviously that's really helpful before you go into a listing appointment to know what kind of loan is on the property, how much they owe on the loan, and when it's due. And you can see all of this information is pulled from public records, so you can access this now. You just probably have to go to one or two other websites, maybe more, and then sometimes you have to dig pretty deep to get it. When I click on Show More, you can see that it opens up to even having the loan number, the document, book, and page information, and it's telling me that this was a loan amount of $572. I even have the lender name and what the interest rate is. So that is going to give me an idea of where my sellers are going to need to be in the listing conversation. I also have the tax assessed value of the property, both with and without improvements, and the deed information, the type of deed that you have, who took title to the property, and again, I can hit Show More, and that's going to give me a little bit of additional information. Now, if this were a distressed property, I would be able to access distressed information on this particular property as well. I'm going to jump over to the History tab from there, and on the History tab, I have some information about the financing history. I can hover over any section of this graph, and wherever my cursor is, it's going to tell me what the amount was at that given time, 7/1/2013. And your legend or your key is right up at the top. As I scroll a little further, you can see I have listed all the prior sales transactions, and I can switch. These are what are recorded in public records, and again, robust information. I have addresses, title companies, lenders, all of the information just in a nice, concise format, so it's easy for you to access and easy for you to view. I can toggle over to the listing records as well and see when it was previously listed, which MLS it was listed in, and what the sales price was at that time, as well as the agent that had it listed. My tax assessed information, we had a snippet of that on the summary page, and as you get into the history, a little more detail because I can look at individual years, and I can go back as far as the property was being assessed for taxes. This little box has the previous and next, and that's what allows me to scroll through the previous years. Same with the mortgage information. I can come over and go back and see what kind of loans were taken on the property if available, and you'll see the most recent one was an adjustable rate. But previous to this, it's listed as unknown, but I still do have the loan amount as well as the lender that was involved. So you can see how this will give you a nice snapshot of what's gone on with the property during the time that it was being used and lived in, and again, giving you a better snapshot of what the seller's position will be when you're deciding whether or not or how much to list the property for. So we'll jump over to the charts tab briefly. And this is for your more analytical folks, maybe the ones who have the detail-oriented mindset. And this just gives you some detailed charts and graphs of what's happened in that community. And anytime you can click on about this data, and it's going to give you the source of where it came from, which is helpful to have that third-party resource. Got your listing inventory, distressed properties, median sales, prices, etc. Now I'm going to jump to the refinement tab. This is where we're calculating or refining the RVM, which we've talked about already. And as I scroll down to the upper midsection of the page, I have the ability to add value based on home improvements that were done to the property while the owners were in it. If I open up my pull-down menu, you can see I have quite a few improvements to choose from. These are provided by a company called Hanley Wood, and they are the provider for information to the National Remodel Magazine. The improvements here are aggregated based on zip codes across the country, and the return on investment that we'll get once we have the calculation that runs is going to be specific for your market area. This is such a nifty tool, and it's very impressive to be able to come in and let's say your sellers did a bathroom remodel. And you can see I've got one that's mid-range and one that's upscale. When I click on one, it gives me this nice paragraph that explains what the system would consider an upscale remodel. It's going to ask you to put in the date that the remodel was done. Let's say it's a couple of years old, and then the cost of that remodel at the time it was done. And I'm just going to pluck a number from there, let's say, not $100,000, let's say $10,000 for that remodel. Now when I hit add, what's going to happen is it has taken the improvement that was done, how long ago it was done, and the initial or original cost of the improvement, and you can see it's come back with the value or the return on that investment of just over $7,000. And again, this is a third-party source giving you data. It's a credible source, and it allows you to have an easier conversation with your sellers about why they won't get the full $10,000 that they originally spent on that improvement in resale because of the time period and also because of what that improvement potentially was. You can also add an improvement that you think they may need to do. So if you go in and maybe they need a bathroom remodel, then you can put that in this section. Our next section in the refinement tab are the slide bars. I'm a big fan of these. What you'll see is as I do the slide bar on the very bottom of the page, you're going to see adjustments here. On the report itself, the adjustment for each slide of the bar shows next to it. And I'm going to show you a sample of that in just a moment. So if we say your local market conditions are pretty hot, things are selling, inventories maybe getting low, then as I slide the bar up, you can see it's added almost $33,000 worth of value for that. Maybe the exterior condition is reasonably well, they pressure washed it, but we walked inside and it smells like a big wet dog. So the smell obviously has taken a significant value off of that, and as you slide each of the bars, it's going to make a value adjustment. Once you have your slide bars completed, then the next step would be to come over and perform the CMA. There are two CMAs available within the RPR platform. One of them is super simple, and that's the one we're going to look at today. And for my people who like to be a little more hands-on with your CMA and making the adjustments numerically, there is the sales comparison analysis, which is kind of intended to be almost an appraiser workflow tool. It presents a different report. You get a whole workbook with that, and you do have to go in and analyze item by item or square foot comparisons and come up with a value adjustment for each one on your own. With the CMA, the comparative analysis, the first step here is going to be to confirm the facts of the home. And when I click on that, you can see it's opened up a box that has number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, square footage, just some of the basics about the house. Now, if there were anything that I happen to know, maybe I had an appraiser measure the house for me. It came in at 2650, slightly higher square footage. As I make that modification, you can see that it's highlighted that particular feature in blue, and it will carry through as I work with this property until I change that back. The next step is going to be to find comparables for my subject property. And this is going to open up a map and some options on the side. But before we jump in, you have add a known property as an option here. Now sometimes you just simply know of a home in the MLS that you are going to want to use because it's very similar, maybe it's in the same neighborhood. You can certainly type in that MLS ID and it will go ahead and automatically pull that listing in for you to use as a comparable in your CMA. But sometimes there's a house that's sold in the neighborhood not in the MLS. It is in public records though. So do a little research and see if you can find out if there is a home that is considered off-market that's near this home or would be a good comparable for this home. Imagine how you've positioned yourself again as the market expert when you come in with a CMA for these potential sellers and you've pulled on-market or MLS properties as well as off-market or public records properties, and both are included in your market analysis. That is probably not something that your competition will be coming in with unless they've taken this class. Hopefully they've heeded that suggestion. But it demonstrates that you are digging deeper, you're taking the extra step to be the market expert and make sure you're getting them the most accurate pricing for the home. So once you've put in any specific properties you want to add, then you can switch over to search, and then you can add additional properties to that so that you get your 3 or 4 that you may want to use as comps. It's going to surround by default the property type, status of the property, and then it will default to a 6-month range as well. You have a pull-down menu, so you can go anywhere from 1 week to 18 months within the pull-down, and you do have the ability to type in a specific date range if that's your preference. It'll also default to bedrooms, bathrooms, and some square footage and age that sort of surrounds the subject property. Again, this is all automatically done. What I will typically do is go ahead and run a search, and then if I don't get enough options from my results, you simply come back and click Modify Search, and you can start expanding your range a little bit or your timeline depending on your approach to this CMA. But you can see I've got 17 sold properties that have come up, so I've got plenty to choose from. And remember, your subject property is always going to stay at the top. So this is going to give me a nice reminder of the amount, the price per square foot, the living square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, just some of the key components that you'll want to use when making your selections. Anything with a blue star simply means that that was a home that was used by the system in calculating the RVM, what we talked about earlier. And it doesn't mean that you have to use it, but it doesn't mean that you can't. So we'll go ahead and throw that one in, and as I click the box, it's going to put it in this column over on the right-hand side. So all of the selections that I make for comps will be thrown over in the right-hand column. And then if I put one over there, like this one that doesn't have a photo, and I get to looking at it and I think, you know, I really want to have homes in my CMA that have photos, I simply click Remove from Comps, and it's going to slide it right back in the main column or main list of homes to choose from. So you can use as many as you'd like. It will just continue to build pages within your CMA, and then you can move them back and forth as needed as well. Now, if you scroll on down the list, you'll also see that it has active listings. Certainly always consult with your broker, and I'm not saying that you would include active or pending necessarily with your CMA, but you could do a whole separate CMA from the one where you're coming up with pricing, because really your pricing strategy is going to depend on homes that have sold, not the homes that are on the market. But sometimes it's helpful if you can have a report that shows them what their competition is. So just another little side tip of providing them extra value. And once I've got my 3 properties, I can click Update Valuation and Close, and this is going to take me to the adjustment section. And on the simple version of the CMA, as I said earlier, this is not one where you're going down and point by point making a value adjustment. All we're going to do here is look at some features about each of the homes and then make a decision, is this comp better or worse than my subject property? And it looks like it's a couple of hundred square feet larger, so let's just bump it up maybe 2 notches. Now, as I do that, you can see that it's added a value adjustment for me. If I bump it down to only 1 notch, it modifies that value adjustment. The same here, we'll make a lower adjustment, and you can see it knows whether or not to add value or subtract value based on whether I'm sliding the bar up or sliding it back down toward the worst side. So we'll do one more slide of the bar, and that is as simple as it gets. That's your simple CMA. You can add some notes at the bottom of each of the comps. Maybe you sold one of them, or you've at least previewed it and you have some information about whether there was a seller concession or any other additional information. And once you have it, you click Update, Valuation, and Close, and that's going to bring us to our final steps of preparing the CMA for our report. Now, at the bottom, you can see it's given me one singular number as well as a range. I think a lot of us prefer to come in with just a range as opposed to one number, so I can click the Edit button, and then if I put a 0 in the top box, it will eliminate the singular number altogether. And I personally prefer nice rounded numbers, so we can go ahead and just override the other date or value range, and I'm going to put in just 850 to 900 and save. So now I've completed my simple CMA. And from here, I can jump over to the Reports tab, and this is where it's going to allow you to select your report, but because we were working on a CMA, it's going to default to the seller's report for me. So I've opened a seller's report in preparation for today's class, and you can see this has the information about the house on the front, my photo, and any agent information that might be in the system. And the seller's report is 75 pages long, so don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole report for you, but there are a couple of quick features I want to show you, and this is one. Remember when I was doing the slide bars, I mentioned that the value adjustments are next to each slide bar. So you can see here as you make the adjustment exactly what that value adjustment is, and that way if you're coming to talk with your seller, and remember it smelled like the big wet dog, that's not an easy conversation to have, but it's real. We go into sellers' homes often and you've got a smoke or a food or a pet odor that's very distinctive, shall we say, and certainly affects the value of the home, and this helps put it in black and white, maybe opening that conversation a little more easier for you to have. And I'll just scroll a little bit further down, and you can kind of see this has got all of your charts and graphs. Remember, we looked at a lot of this previously. You've got your seller's reports, and then further on down, you'll have the CMA and all of the information on that included. Now, at the very end of the report, let me just scroll quickly and see if I can get to it. You have your seller's proceed or your seller's net sheet. Remember, we looked at that as well, and looks like it's fairly lengthy. So I'm going to go back to the live website, and I'm going to jump back to the property details. What we're going to look at here are sorry, I had some information coming through on the phone there. I'm going to show you one more tip before we start wrapping this up. And remember, if you do have any questions about what we've covered here, you can go ahead and type in the chat box your question. I'll be happy to make sure I answer that first before I finish. So I'm going to go to the summary of the property. And remember, this is where we launched when I first jumped into the live website. And on the detailed summary, you can see I have a map over here. If I click on bigger map, it makes it bigger. And I can zoom in and out on the map to look at the different neighborhoods, the different statuses of the houses in that particular area. Something that you saw when I opened up the report, but I didn't cover yet, are the heat maps. The heat maps are located just below your map, and when I pull down the menu, I have about 10 to choose from. So one of the features is the listing price versus the sales price. When I click on that, you can see that it kind of puts some color in, not a lot, but the darker red means they got a lot less than the list price for the actual sales price, and then the darker blue looks like some waterfront here, so not surprising that they might get more than the list price. This is, again, for your visual people. You know, we've got the charts and graphs for your more analytical engineer people, and you've got the heat maps, which are very nice for your more visual people. Another feature to look at on the heat map is your 12-month change in estimated values of properties. And this one has a little bit more color that's popped up, so you can see the darker the red, the decrease in the value, and the darker the blue, the more increase in value of properties. And you'll have pockets within any given area. We'll look at one more of these, which is sometimes interesting. You can look at the concentration of distressed properties. So you have a few pockets, again, here where you still do have some distressed properties, but not too bad. So like most of the country, this particular area has bounced back from our great correction that we went through. And to get rid of your heat maps, you'll see the very top section says none, and that will allow you to go back to the normal map that you were originally on. So I'm going to jump back into the slides and kind of do a brief wrap up. Again, remember, if you've got any questions at all about what we've covered, I'm going to be finishing up in just a few minutes, so I want to make sure you have a chance to type those in. So today we covered the AVMs versus RVMs, what the differences, what the benefits and disadvantages are. And I went over some tips of how to dig deeper into the property history, even looking at the actual history tab, which showed us a nice chart of sales and financing activity. And we were able to look at previous sales transactions, as well as going back with tax assessments and tax information as far back as the property was being assessed. Now again, I emphasized this earlier, but the mortgage records are just key to be able to see what kind of loans have been taken out on the home, where they are, what their status is going to give you a great idea of what to expect when you walk in that door to the listing appointment. And of course, if it were a distressed property, I showed you where to find that information so that you know if the lis pendens has been filed or if it in fact is already gone into the foreclosure process. All of that is available in public records, so all of that will pull through into RPR. We looked at the charts tab, which gave us an idea of a range of properties within that area and how it might compare to the subject property, as well as current inventory. And the refinement tab is where we did our slide bars and even looked at the home improvements. And remember, Hanley Woods, that was the name of the improvement company, and they provide data to the National Remodel Magazine. We covered some market and home conditions in the refinement value as well, and that was your slide bars where you were able to open up some conversations that are not always easy. We looked at the CMA and used the simple version, and then I showed you a sample of what the seller's report looks like. That report is editable, by the way, so if you don't want 75 pages, you can remove some pages as you get into the report section. Within the seller's report, you do have a lot of information, including all of the tools that we covered as we just went through this specific presentation. So if today wasn't enough for you, you can go to blog.narrpr.com, and that gives you a schedule of webinar pre-recorded webinars as well as live classes and live webinars that might be available. You also have a help desk when you log into RPR that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have a live chat button on every page of the website, as well as a toll-free number that you can call if you get hung up or just have a quick question. I think that's really remarkable, so I'm going to emphasize it one more time. The help is available through RPR's website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're playing around late at night and everybody else in your house is sleeping, you can still open up that live chat and get some help if you get hung up on any given section. So with that, Sheena, I appreciate so much the opportunity to present the information about how to win a listing appointment, and I hope that your Realtor members gathered a little bit of information that will help them when they prepare for the next listing opportunity. And I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for that awesome presentation. With that being said, I would now like to end this webinar and thank you everyone so much for joining us, and a huge thank you to Stephanie and RPR for hosting this month's webinar. Have a great day, everyone.